Blog Talk Radio.
This is Leadership Radio. Leadership Radio is sponsored by Cox Business Consulting. This is Tom on Leadership.
And this is Tom Cox, your host for Tom on Leadership here on Leadership Radio. Thank you for tuning in. We've got a terrific topic this week. It's about coaching and mentoring. And it's also about manners. And I've chosen these because they're like bookends, if you will. One is really about your relationship with yourself and your ability to be productive, to improve yourself. And the other is much more about the way in which you interact with folks with whom you haven't built up a lot of trust, who aren't yet part of the team. And, of course, as we'll learn, I'm sure that if manners are important with strangers, they're even more important with people you are close to. Before we get into our first half hour and our discussion of coaching, I want to remind you of the past couple of episodes. We've had some amazing episodes just these past few weeks, and they include Leading with the Heart with Ron Chapman last week. Prior to that, Leading Across Generations, about how to handle the cultural differences and the interactions between folks from very different generations and backgrounds in the workplace. Prior to that, Zweifler's 20 Questions, how a corporate valuation expert tells good leaders from bad, along with Leadership and Business Culture with Susan Steinbrecher. Coming up in the next couple of episodes, we have Leadership and Team Formation, followed by Habits of Leadership Acknowledgement, followed by a session specifically on employee retention, which is going to have to be twice as important during a recession as it is in normal times. So we are now going to give it about a half an hour's worth of treatment, which I'm confident will be insufficient to do more than scratch the surface, of a topic that has gained a lot of prominence in the past decade or so, and that is executive coaching. We didn't hear a lot about that I can recall back in the 70s or 80s. By the late 90s, we were starting to hear about it, and now that it's 2009, it seems everybody and his brother's got a coach. And as with anything good, it can be done to excess. That doesn't mean there's not quite a lot of good there in this concept of coaching. And one of the things that I think I'd like to start with is understanding the difference between coaching and mentoring, understanding the difference between coaching and other kinds of relationships where you try to grow people. And to do that, we're very fortunate to have on the show. Yet again, we bring you another nationally recognized expert. This is a gentleman who's the CEO and owner of a firm called The Growth Coach in the Washington, D.C. area. And he's a member of the American Legion. He's a member of the Veteran of Foreign Wars. He got his degree in engineering from the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, where he also played football. And this is somebody with many, many years of coaching experience. And with no further ado, let me introduce first half hour's guest, Ingar Grev. Hello, Ingar. Thanks for coming on.
Hello, Tom. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to understand a little bit about you and how you got into this exciting and, dare I say, perhaps a bit cliched field of coaching. And you always grow up wanting to be a coach?
No. You read a little bit my background there, and I actually have about 3 engineering degrees. I grew up actually just wanting to be an engineer and be a cog in the corporate system.
And you worked at Raytheon, and you worked at a bunch of big companies, Verizon.
Yeah, Raytheon, Verizon. I was in the U.S. Navy and a startup company out of California in your neck of the woods named Covad Communications. So, yeah, I've been around the block a few times with both large and small companies and big organizations with the U.S. Navy. During that process, I really learned that my interest was not so much in engineering, but it was really in business and leadership. Over the course of time, I found myself attracted to or drawn to leadership roles. I'm my class president. I've been asked to lead a bunch of organizations the companies that I worked for, I was promoted all the time without even asking to be promoted or looking for it. Just it was a thing that I guess we all have a talent and skill that's built into us, if you will, and I think mine was leadership, and I think it was tempered a little bit by my experience in the Naval Academy as well as on the U.S. Navy. So the focus, though, shifting over to coaching or consulting was when I was getting my master's degree in systems engineering. I realized I no longer wanted to be an engineer. So I created a methodology for applying the rigors of systems engineering, so that having a big picture view of how an organization should work and or how things should work, and applying that to businesses and organizations. And it just went from there. I started merging more and more and more into leading organizations, and in the technology space, obviously, but not doing any engineering at all. And coaching was interesting. You know, I heard you in your introduction, you talked about coaching. I was probably, and probably still am, the biggest cynic when it comes to coaching. I mean, I am. In fact, I just talked to a guy last night, or 2 nights ago at the Nationals game over here in D.C., and he talked about some of the stuff that he went through when he engaged business coaches before in the past, who spent a lot of time on psychology, and he felt that there was an awful lot of kumbaya associated with what he's going through. And compare and contrast it with me and the people who I guess I feel comfortable with in coaching is, you know, I really am much more interested in helping leaders create effective organizations, effective businesses. And, you know, in terms of the personal aspect of their lives, what makes them tick and so forth, that I would like to give them more time in their lives so they can worry about that. Right. So I'm more worried about getting that business to run like a real business. And not like not like a prison, if you will, you know, that causes executives to spend 1 million hours at the office and forget about their kids or their personal lives or other passions they had at home. And so, yeah, that's basically it. You know, as a big cynic, when I was really looking around trying to start another business a couple of years ago, again, heavily technology related, I had an epiphany that, you know, it's not so much the technology that's interesting to me. What's interesting to me is helping leaders get a lot better at execution, a lot better at leading, and a lot better at understanding how to run a business so that they can solve all the problems that you see that are manifested or reflected throughout organizations because lack of training or lack of proper motivation or whatever that causes them to run organizations ineffectively, from pink slip paranoia, people thinking they're going to lose their jobs or getting resumes out because they're being micromanaged, to all the other things associated with a poorly run business. That's it. That's how I gravitated to coaching.
Well, and let me have you explore for me, because I started with perhaps not quite your level of cynicism, but with a lot of cynicism about coaching as this touchy-feely nonsense that you end up with, one friend of mine says, you know, housewives who've taken, you know, after-school courses and gotten certificates, and now they're coaches. Right. And, you know, nothing wrong with housewives, but come on. You know, I only want to do it if it's going to make a difference in the bottom line. I only want to do it if it's going to really help me and everybody else in the long term. I don't want to do it to feel good. I want to feel good. I'll go to church.
That's right.
You know, or I'll take the day off and go see a movie. So, you know, and then we look at high-performing athletes, and they've all got coaches. We look at high-performing executives, even historically, even before there was this spate of this thing called coaching, almost universally we find that they had some kind of network of relationships that they had built where they were asking people for advice. And I noticed myself as I was advancing in my consulting career that the people I was most impressed with were the ones who asked the most questions and sought me out, and clearly had other people that they'd sought out. Probably the most impressive single executive I've worked with is the only woman I'm aware of who heads a trauma surgery department at a major hospital in the U.S., and she got 3 different mentors that she had identified that would help her in different parts. It was part of her plan. She had it figured out. She wanted somebody who'd done X, and somebody who'd done Y, and somebody who'd done Z, and had approached those people, and he asked them once a month or so, she'd call them for a couple of hours and dump her problems on them listen to their reflected ideas, and then decide for herself what she